Madison Rivers had everything: money, fame, and a life that most could only dream of. Olivia Martin had nothing but the love of her parents and a world full of potential. In a twisted turn of fate, Madison's privileged life collided with Olivia's innocence in a chilling crime that would shatter both families forever. As the search for the missing baby intensified, no one could have predicted the darkness lurking behind Madison's flawless exterior, and the terrifying truth would be revealed in ways no one could imagine. Madison Rivers was the epitome of privilege. Born into a family that never said no to her, she had spent her entire life wrapped in a cocoon of wealth and entitlement. Her father, a real estate tycoon, and her mother, a socialite known for her extravagant charity galas, had ensured that Madison wanted for nothing. By the time she turned 18, she had traveled the world, attended exclusive prep schools, and amassed a social media following that treated her like royalty. From the outside, her life seemed flawless, a curated feed of sunlit vacations, luxury cars, and endless parties. When she arrived at Weston University, Madison was immediately the center of attention. Weston wasn't just any college, it was a playground for the elite, filled with children of politicians, celebrities, and CEOs. Madison fit right in, quickly becoming one of the most recognizable faces on campus. Her Instagram posts showcased lavish nights at exclusive clubs, carefully chosen outfits worth more than most people's monthly rent, and cryptic captions that hinted at a life beyond comprehension. Madison didn't just thrive on attention, she craved it. But Madison's charm had a sharp edge. She had a way of making everyone around her feel both dazzled and uneasy, as though her affection came with a hidden expiration date. Her friends often joked about her being too honest when she'd cut someone down with a biting comment disguised as wit. Madison's cruelty, however, wasn't always so subtle. Beneath her polished exterior lurked a darker personality, one that viewed the world with an almost predatory sense of detachment. Her peers would later admit that Madison seemed bored by the very life she so carefully showcased. She would roll her eyes at expensive gifts, dismiss heartfelt compliments, and even mock her closest friends behind their backs. Her appetite for drama was insatiable. To Madison, people weren't companions or confidants, they were props in a show where she was always the star. And when life on campus didn't provide enough excitement, she created it herself. One night, while scrolling through social media in her penthouse dorm room, Madison posted something that would change everything. She uploaded a video to her private Snapchat story, available only to a select group of followers. In it, she reclined on her designer couch, a glass of champagne in hand, laughing hysterically. Between giggles, she described a horrifying scenario: harming a baby simply because she could. The video lasted less than a minute, and her tone made it seem like a joke, just another one of her edgy attempts at humor. But not everyone found it funny. A few of her followers screenshot the video before it disappeared, horrified by her flippant attitude toward such a grotesque idea. One anonymous user leaked the clip to a popular campus gossip page, and within hours, the video went viral. Students shared it in group chats, parents called the university demanding answers, and the local news even picked up the story. Madison, however, remained unshaken. She refused to apologize, shrugging off the backlash with a smirk, and a carefully worded tweet: "Dark humor isn't for everyone." For her, the controversy was just another performance, another way to keep the spotlight fixed firmly on her. What no one realized was that the video wasn't just a tasteless joke, it was a glimpse into the warped mind of someone who saw life, and even human suffering, as nothing more than entertainment. It started as every parent's worst nightmare. Megan and Daniel Martin woke up to find their 10-month-old daughter Olivia missing from her crib. Their suburban home, nestled in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood near Weston University, had always felt safe. That night, however, something unthinkable had occurred. Megan had checked on Olivia around midnight and found her sleeping peacefully. By 7 a.m., when she went to wake her, the crib was empty. The only trace of Olivia was a soft blanket, left crumpled on the floor. The Martins called the police immediately, their voices trembling with panic. Within hours, officers swarmed the neighborhood, questioning neighbors, examining windows for signs of forced entry, and searching nearby parks and wooded areas. Amber alerts were issued statewide, and Olivia's cherubic face appeared on news broadcasts and missing posters everywhere. The Martins, visibly distraught, pleaded with the public for information, begging anyone who might know something to come forward. For days, the search dominated headlines. Volunteers joined law enforcement in combing the area, and tips poured in from concerned citizens. Some claimed to have seen a woman carrying a baby at a nearby gas station. Others mentioned suspicious vehicles lingering in the neighborhood. Each lead was pursued exhaustively, but none brought them closer to finding Olivia. As hope began to waver, the community's initial shock turned into a simmering fear. Who could have done this? Unbeknownst to the Martins and investigators, Madison Rivers had been watching the family for weeks. She had stumbled upon Megan Martin's Instagram account months earlier, drawn in by photos of Olivia smiling in her stroller, dressed in adorable outfits, and surrounded by balloons on her first birthday. At first, Madison's interest in the Martins seemed harmless, a casual fascination with the picturesque family. But as time went on, it grew darker. Madison began driving by their house late at night, staring at the glowing windows as if they were a stage set designed for her amusement. When Olivia's disappearance became public, Madison couldn't resist injecting herself into the drama. She snapped a selfie in front of a missing poster featuring Olivia, her perfect makeup and manicured nails starkly contrasting the desperate plea printed beneath the baby's photo. Madison posted the picture to her Instagram story with the caption "Missing something." The post, though quickly deleted, caused a small uproar among those who saw it. Some dismissed it as another example of Madison's tasteless humor, while others were deeply unsettled. Rumors about her involvement began circulating on campus, but when questioned, Madison denied everything with a smirk. She claimed she was being unfairly targeted because of her wealth and popularity, brushing off the suspicions as jealousy. The police, however, couldn't ignore her. A neighbor had reported seeing a car resembling Madison's parked on the Martin Street late one night, and detectives began quietly looking into her background. Yet without concrete evidence, Madison remained untouchable. Her family's high-profile lawyers ensured that any inquiries into her activities were met with swift pushback. As the investigation stalled, Madison reveled in the chaos she had helped create. She followed the Martins' story obsessively, consuming every news update and scrolling through comment sections filled with speculation. For Madison, the tragedy wasn't real, it was a story, and she was its invisible puppet master. She felt invincible, confident that no one would ever connect her to what had happened. But the police were closing in, piecing together clues that would soon shatter Madison's illusion of control. The investigation into Olivia Martin's disappearance was at a standstill, leaving the Martins to grapple with the agony of unanswered questions. But everything changed when a seemingly minor lead opened a door to a much darker revelation. A storage facility manager contacted the police after noticing something unusual. A unit that hadn't been rented for long emitted a faint, unpleasant odor. The unit, registered under a fake name, was paid for in cash, an immediate red flag. When police arrived to investigate, they were unprepared for what they found. Inside the small, dimly lit space were several items that immediately drew their attention. Among them was a stuffed animal that Megan Martin later identified as Olivia's favorite toy. A baby blanket lay crumpled on the floor with dark, dried stains that initial tests suggested were blood. There were also discarded diapers and what appeared to be formula containers, suggesting that whoever had taken Olivia had kept her alive for some time after the abduction. Surveillance footage from the facility showed a woman entering late at night, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses. The video quality was poor, and while investigators couldn't confirm her identity, the figure's build and distinctive gait resembled Madison Rivers. The footage provided a tantalizing connection, but not enough to make an arrest. By this point, whispers about Madison's involvement were growing louder on campus. Former friends and classmates began to come forward, describing her unsettling behavior. One student claimed Madison had once joked about how easy it would be to kidnap a baby if someone was bored enough. Another mentioned her obsession with gaining attention, even if it meant crossing moral boundaries. What seemed like harmless eccentricities at the time now painted a chilling picture of a woman who thrived on control and chaos. Madison, however, seemed unfazed by the growing scrutiny. She continued attending classes and posting on social media as though nothing had happened, portraying herself as the victim of a witch hunt. Her posts were cryptic, often mocking the rumors swirling around her. In one photo, she posed next to a newsstand featuring Olivia's missing poster, her expression coy and unbothered. It was as if she fed off the tension, relishing her role in the growing spectacle. Behind closed doors, however, cracks in her composure began to show. Her inner circle, once fiercely loyal, started to distance themselves. Rumors surfaced that Madison had confided in a close friend, bragging about how she had the whole town in her hand. Whether the claim was true or another example of her dark sense of humor, it further fueled suspicions. Investigators, now more convinced of her involvement, dug deeper into Madison's past. They discovered a disturbing pattern, a history of manipulative behavior that had escalated over time. Old classmates recounted stories of her cruelty, from sabotaging friendships to orchestrating elaborate pranks that left others humiliated. What stood out most was her complete lack of empathy, a trait that seemed to grow stronger as she got older. The breakthrough came when forensic analysts matched fingerprints from the storage locker items to Madison's. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling, enough to secure a search warrant for her dorm room. What they found there would transform the case entirely and reveal just how calculated Madison had been in her pursuit of chaos. Madison's notebook, tucked away in a designer bag, became the centerpiece of the investigation. Its pages were filled with dark fantasies, scribbled in meticulous detail. One entry described the perfect crime, complete with plans for evading suspicion and manipulating the media. Sketches of cribs, teddy bears, and bloodstains filled the margins, their disturbing content leaving little doubt about the author's state of mind. The discovery turned Madison from a spoiled socialite into a suspected predator. But even as the walls began to close in, she refused to acknowledge the gravity of what she had done, her arrogance blinding her to the storm that was about to consume her. The discovery of Madison's notebook was a turning point in the case against her. The pages painted a chilling portrait of her warped psyche, revealing a meticulous mind obsessed with control and a disturbing lack of empathy. Her perfect crime entry was particularly damning, detailing not only her plans for taking Olivia, but also how she intended to confuse authorities and shift suspicion onto others. Forensic experts confirmed that the handwriting matched Madison's, and this new evidence allowed prosecutors to begin building a compelling case against her. As the investigation progressed, the media frenzy intensified. Madison became a national headline, her face splashed across news outlets alongside Olivia's missing posters. Pundits debated whether she was a misunderstood young woman caught up in a storm of circumstantial evidence or a dangerous sociopath who had finally been exposed. True crime enthusiasts dissected her social media posts, analyzing every selfie and caption for clues. The once revered socialite was now a pariah, her luxurious life and calculated charm unraveling under the weight of public scrutiny. The trial itself became a spectacle, drawing crowds of reporters, students, and locals eager to witness the downfall of someone who had once seemed untouchable. Prosecutors laid out their case methodically, presenting the notebook, surveillance footage, and the items found in the storage locker. They argued that Madison's actions were not impulsive but premeditated, driven by a desire to assert power and control over others. Her fascination with the Martins, they claimed, had morphed into an obsession with Olivia, a child she saw not as a person, but as a pawn in her twisted game. The defense, however, painted a very different picture. Madison's lawyers argued that she was the victim of a smear campaign fueled by jealousy and media sensationalism. They claimed the notebook was nothing more than the musings of a bored, creative college student who enjoyed writing dark fiction. Her legal team leaned heavily on her upbringing, portraying her as a misunderstood girl raised in an environment where boundaries were never enforced. They even introduced a psychological evaluation suggesting that Madison suffered from a personality disorder, which they argued impaired her ability to distinguish between fantasy and reality. Madison's demeanor during the trial only added to the intrigue. She remained calm and composed, her expression rarely betraying any emotion. Some saw this as a sign of guilt, evidence of a cold and calculating mind. Others believed it showed resilience, a refusal to let the accusations break her. The public was divided, with debates raging online and in coffee shops across the country. The most shocking moment came when Megan Martin took the stand. The grieving mother described the sheer terror of discovering Olivia missing and the toll the ordeal had taken on her family. Her testimony was raw and emotional, a stark contrast to Madison's aloofness. When Megan locked eyes with Madison, the courtroom fell silent. Madison's expression remained impassive, her lack of reaction chilling to everyone in attendance. As the trial continued, new details emerged that deepened the case's complexity. Investigators revealed digital evidence linking Madison to anonymous online forums where she had allegedly discussed her plans and even bragged about her ability to manipulate those around her. These revelations solidified the prosecution's argument that Madison's actions were not the result of a mental health crisis, but a deliberate and calculated scheme. The jury was left to decide whether Madison was a master manipulator or a deeply troubled individual. As the world watched, the outcome seemed poised to define not only Madison's future, but also the legacy of one of the most shocking crimes the community had ever seen. The jury deliberated for days, the tension in the courtroom growing with every passing hour. Madison sat silently, her expression unreadable, as the weight of the evidence pressed heavily against her. The prosecution had presented a mountain of proof: fingerprints, the disturbing notebook, surveillance footage, and painted a chilling picture of a young woman who had orchestrated a crime as calculated as it was horrifying. The defense, though persistent, failed to sway the jury's opinion. While they argued Madison's actions were the result of a psychological disorder, there was little doubt left in anyone's mind that she had carefully planned Olivia's kidnapping and murder. When the verdict was finally read aloud, it sent ripples of shock through the packed courtroom. Madison Rivers was found guilty of kidnapping and second-degree murder. The relief in the Martins' eyes was tempered only by the realization that no punishment could bring back their daughter. Olivia's death had shattered their family in ways no court decision could fix. The Martins, while grateful for the verdict, now had to face the cruel finality of their loss. Madison's reaction to the conviction was one of eerie calm. She didn't show any remorse, didn't break down in tears, or plead for leniency. Instead, she stared straight ahead, almost as if she were above it all, her icy demeanor only reinforcing the portrait of a woman who had never once acknowledged the humanity of those around her. It was as though she were detached from reality, seeing herself as a spectator rather than a participant in the drama she had created. Her blank stare was enough to send a chill through those who had followed the case from the beginning. As the sentencing phase approached, the courtroom was filled with media, families, and onlookers, all eager to witness what would come next. The prosecution pushed for a harsh sentence, arguing that Madison's lack of remorse and premeditation made her a danger to society. Her defense team, though, continued to claim that she had suffered from a personality disorder that impaired her judgment. But the idea that Madison was a victim of her upbringing, of her environment, fell flat. The public had seen too much of her cruelty, too much of her twisted indifference to accept that excuse. In the end, Madison was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The ruling was met with mixed reactions. Some felt the sentence was too lenient for someone who had taken a life so casually, while others believed it was a fair judgment considering the complexities of her mental state. Regardless, Madison's fate was sealed, and her name would forever be associated with one of the most chilling crimes the community had ever witnessed. Over time, the media's focus shifted away from Madison and toward the Martins. Megan and Daniel became advocates for children's safety, using their heartbreak to fuel their mission to raise awareness about the dangers of unchecked privilege and the importance of keeping a watchful eye on those who might be hiding in plain sight. The memory of Olivia lived on in their hearts, but their public fight for justice was what brought them some solace. Madison's story, however, was far from over. Despite her conviction, rumors began circulating that she was still manipulating those around her from prison, maintaining a strange hold over the media and anyone willing to listen. Interviews, books, and documentaries about her life before and after the crime became a lucrative business. The dark curiosity surrounding her only grew with time, as people continued to search for answers to the questions she had left behind. Was she truly a monster, born from privilege and entitlement? Or was she simply a young woman who had slipped through the cracks of society, her darkness nurtured in ways no one had anticipated? Her name faded from the front pages, but the question lingered: what kind of person could take the life of an innocent baby and not bat an eye? And how many more people like Madison, hidden beneath a polished surface, walked among us?